What do you mean you don't have the keys? The house is empty. That can't be right. I said the words slowly, my knuckles turning white as I gripped my phone tighter. Across the street, an older man sat on his porch, pretending to read the newspaper, while clearly watching me pace back and forth in front of what used to be my home. My name is Elena Cruz, and I had just driven 4 hours from my university to Bakersfield for spring break, only to find my childhood home abandoned, with a for sale sign brutally hammered into the front lawn. The windows were stripped bare. No curtains. No furniture. No sign of life. 3 black garbage bags sat on the porch like something discarded and forgotten. My stomach dropped. I tore one open with shaking hands. Inside were my clothes. My notebooks. My favorite hoodie. Pieces of my life, stuff I had left behind when I moved to college, stuff my parents had decided no longer mattered. Your father said you should have called first, my Uncle Daniel said on the phone, his voice cautious. They moved last week. Didn't they tell you? No, I whispered. They didn't tell me anything. The word anything barely made it past the knot in my throat. I hung up and immediately called my father. Ring. 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 Each second stretched painfully. Hello. His voice was flat. Detached. Dad, the house is empty. My things are in garbage bags. What's going on? Silence. Then, cold and final, we moved. You're an adult now. Deal with it. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, stunned. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I tried my mother's phone. No answer. I called my younger brother Marco. Nothing. Just like that, I was erased. No warning. No explanation. No goodbye. I stood there as the sun dipped lower, long shadows stretching across the yard where I had learned to ride a bike. The maple tree my father and I had planted when I was 8 still stood tall, its branches reaching toward a house that no longer belonged to us. I had sent money home every month from my scholarship. I had maintained a 3.9 GPA in pre-law. I worked part-time while studying full-time. I was the responsible one. The quiet one. The daughter who never caused trouble. And this was my reward. I didn't cry. Instead, I lifted those garbage bags and shoved them into my car. I checked into a cheap roadside motel, laying my salvaged belongings across the rough bedspread. Textbooks. Winter clothes. A broken picture frame with a family photo from 3 summers ago, everyone smiling. Everyone lying. That night, staring at the cracked ceiling, I made a decision. If they wanted to erase me, I would disappear completely. I would cut all ties and build something they could never take away from me. I grew up believing family meant unconditional support. My parents had immigrated before I was born, and family first wasn't just a saying, it was law in our household. My father worked double shifts at a factory. My mother cleaned houses. We came here with nothing so you could have everything, my father used to say. Education is your ticket out. I believed him. While others partied, I studied. While friends worked more jobs, I interned at the courthouse. My acceptance into university, on a pre-law scholarship, was supposed to make them proud. My brother Marco was different. He struggled in school, preferred video games, and had been caught shoplifting twice. Yet they never threatened to abandon him. He's finding his way, they'd say. So why was I the one left behind? That night, alone in the motel, I called Professor Reed, my constitutional law instructor and mentor. They just left, she asked softly. Yes, I said. I don't know what to do. Come stay with me, she said without hesitation. We'll figure this out together. That was the moment everything began to change. Professor Reed's house didn't feel like a temporary refuge, it felt like a pause button on chaos. It was an old Victorian tucked behind tall hedges, the kind of place that smelled faintly of books, brewed tea, and time itself. 2 elderly cats ruled the household, barely acknowledging my arrival as Professor Reed handed me a spare key. No deadlines. No pressure, she said gently. Focus on your studies. The rest will come. I nodded, but sleep didn't come easily that night. My mind replayed the image of my belongings stuffed into garbage bags, the hollow finality of my father's voice. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing something terrifying and liberating at the same time. I was completely on my own. Spring break passed in a blur of research articles and case law. Instead of beaches or parties, I spent hours at Professor Reed's dining table, highlighters scattered, notes laid over notes. She noticed my intensity one evening and smiled knowingly. "You're channeling pain," she said. "That can be dangerous, or powerful. Choose wisely." Through her connections, she introduced me to a summer legal internship at Stonebridge Legal Group, a firm specializing in housing discrimination and tenant rights. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had lost my own home without warning, and now I would be helping others fight to keep theirs. My first day at Stonebridge was overwhelming. Phones rang constantly. Files stacked up on every surface. Families sat in the waiting area, their faces tight with worry. I was assigned basic tasks, research, intake forms, coffee runs, but I watched closely, absorbing everything. My supervisor, attorney Clara Bennett, noticed me during a client meeting where a young mother struggled to explain her eviction notice through tears. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rush her. I listened. Afterward, Clara pulled me aside. "You have something rare," she said. "You make people feel heard. Don't lose that." By midsummer, my role shifted. I began assisting with intake interviews, sitting across from elderly tenants facing illegal rent hikes, students targeted by predatory landlords, and families given days to vacate their apartments. Their stories echoed pieces of my own, even if the details differed. One evening, after interviewing 3 families from the same apartment complex, who had all received eviction notices on the same day, I stayed late organizing files. The office lights hummed softly as exhaustion set in. Clara found me at nearly 9 o'clock, surrounded by paperwork. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked. "These families have nowhere to go," I said. "The developers are offering them 2 weeks in a motel and calling it compensation." Clara sighed. "Legally, that's often enough. But it shouldn't be," I insisted. 2 weeks doesn't cover deposits, first month's rent, or the time it takes to find housing. They'll end up homeless. She studied me carefully. "So what are you going to do about it?" The question followed me for days. What could I do? I was just a second-year pre-law student with an internship and a bruised heart. But then, during a mandatory university financial aid seminar, a presenter mentioned social innovation grants, funding for student-led projects addressing community issues. The deadline was 2 weeks away. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a proposal for a housing advocacy program specifically designed for students and low-income families, people who fell through the cracks. I called it Safe Haven Project. A place where tenants could get guidance, representation, and time. Clara helped refine the legal framework. Professor Reed reviewed every line, every claim, every goal. "Make it real," she said. "Show them why this matters." While I waited to hear back, something else returned to my life. My parents. The first voicemail came 6 months after they abandoned me. "Elena," my father said. "Your mother is worried. Call us." No apology. No explanation. Just expectation. I didn't respond. 3 days later, another voicemail. This silence is childish. We're your family. I saved the messages, but didn't reply. The calls increased. Sometimes my mother. Sometimes my father. Occasionally my brother Marco. Their tones shifted from demanding to pleading, but none of them acknowledged what they had done. When the university awarded me the grant, $25,000 to launch Safe Haven Project, I didn't tell them. When Stonebridge offered me a paid position to continue my work through the academic year, I celebrated with Professor Reed and Clara instead. By January, Safe Haven Project had helped 23 students fight wrongful evictions. We worked out of a converted storage room, with volunteer paralegals and rotating law students earning clinical hours. I rushed from classes to case files, from interviews to court documents. The work was exhausting, but it felt like purpose stitched together from pain. I was building something from the wreckage they had left behind. And I wasn't going back. By February, Safe Haven Project had become more than an idea, or a side initiative, it was a living, breathing operation. Our converted storage room buzzed with constant movement. Phones rang. Printers jammed. Whiteboards filled with deadlines and court dates. Every inch of the space carried urgency. Most days, I sprinted from lectures straight to the office, shoving protein bars into my bag, answering emails between classes. Nights were spent reviewing cases, drafting letters, and preparing tenants for hearings. I was tired in a way sleep couldn't fix, but for the first time, the exhaustion felt meaningful. Each victory mattered. A student who kept his apartment. An elderly couple granted more time. A family spared from sleeping in their car. Every success felt like reclaiming a piece of what I'd lost. Meanwhile, my parents intensified their attempts to reach me. The missed call count climbed into the hundreds. When I refused to answer, relatives stepped in. "Your mother cries every night," my Aunt Rosa texted. "Whatever they did, can't you forgive them?" I didn't reply. Forgiveness required acknowledgement, and they still hadn't admitted what they'd done. One Tuesday afternoon, I was meeting with a sophomore named Noah, who had returned from winter break to find his landlord had rented out his room despite his paid lease. As we discussed his options, the office phone rang. "Safe Haven Project, this is Elena," I answered, offering Noah an apologetic smile. "Elena," a familiar voice said. My stomach dropped. It was my mother. I covered the receiver. "I'm sorry," I whispered to Noah. "Would you mind waiting outside for a moment?" He nodded and left. I uncovered the phone. "How did you get this number?" "It's on your website," she said. "Why haven't you returned our calls?" "We've been worried sick." "This is my workplace," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Please don't call here again." "We're your parents," she replied, her voice cracking. "We have the right." "You lost that right," I said sharply. "When you packed my life into garbage bags and sold the house without telling me." There was a pause. Then her voice softened. "Your father made a mistake. We had financial problems. The house was going into foreclosure. We were embarrassed." The words cracked something in me. Foreclosure. They had never mentioned money trouble. If they had, I would have helped. I was helping. "If you were struggling," I said quietly, "you could have told me." I was already sending money home. "Your father wouldn't allow it," she said. "His pride." I knew that pride well. It had ruled our family for years. Still, it didn't excuse abandonment. "I need to get back to work," I said. "Please respect my boundaries." I hung up before she could respond, my hands trembling as I placed the phone down. That evening, Clara Bennett found me staring at the call log. "You seem distracted," she said, sitting on the edge of my desk. I told her everything. "Part of me wants to believe they had a reason," I admitted. Clara considered this. "People rarely act from pure cruelty. But reasons and excuses aren't the same thing. Whatever their problems were, they chose to handle them by leaving you." She was right. And yet, doubt lingered. The next day, against my better judgment, I searched for my family online. What I found erased any remaining sympathy. A cheerful Facebook post from my mother, dated 3 weeks after they moved, showed my parents and Marco smiling in front of a new house. The caption read, "New beginnings. So blessed. No foreclosure. No crisis. Just a decision to leave me behind." The calls kept coming. Voicemails shifted from angry to strangely casual. "Marco got into community college," my mother said in one message. "The neighbors brought us food," my father said in another. They spoke as if we were still a family, as if nothing had happened. Those updates hurt more than their anger ever did. While they narrated their new life, Safe Haven Project began drawing attention. A local news station featured our work. The university paper published a profile highlighting our approach to housing justice. With visibility came pressure. "We need more resources," I told Clara, gesturing to overflowing intake folders. "More volunteers. More space." "I might have a solution," she said. "The Harrison Foundation is accepting applications for major social justice grants. Enough funding to turn this into a real nonprofit." The application process was brutal. Weeks of drafting, revising, collecting testimonials, compiling data. The final proposal ran nearly 50 pages, detailing Safe Haven's mission, impact, and future expansion. 2 days after submission, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number, my hometown's area code. "Hello. Elena? It's Mrs. Alvarez, from next door. Our old neighbor. I hope it's okay that I called," she said quickly. "Marco gave me your number. He said you might not answer if you saw their names." My defenses shot up. "If this is about reconnecting with my parents," "No," she interrupted. "It's about the house. Someone broke in last night." My heart skipped. "What?" "The police think they were looking for valuables. Your father asked me to check if you had come back for something. He didn't want to report it if it was you." I almost laughed. "I haven't been back since that day. I don't even have keys." "That's what I told him," she sighed. "But there's something else. The intruder left an envelope behind. It has your name on it." My breath caught. "What does it say?" "I haven't opened it," she said. "But it looks official. A law firm's name. Official mail sent to a house that was no longer mine." "Can you open it?" I asked. There was a pause. Then paper tearing. "Elena," her voice trembled. "It's about your grandmother's estate." My mind reeled. "What estate?" She swallowed. "It says you've inherited property in Mexico. And there's a bank statement. Over $400,000. The truth was about to unravel everything. I sank into the nearest chair, as Mrs. Alvarez's words echoed in my ears. $400,000. The number didn't make sense. My grandmother had lived simply in a small town in Mexico. I remembered her garden, her faded aprons, the way she counted coins carefully before sending me candy in the mail. She didn't own resorts or condos. She barely owned anything at all. "That can't be right," I said, my voice barely steady. "She didn't have that kind of money." "The letter explains it, Mrs. Alvarez replied gently. "The land was developed after her death. Resort condominiums. Your share is from the sale of 2 units. My hand shook as I grabbed a pen and scribbled notes, while she read out the law firm's contact details. My heart pounded, not with excitement, but with dread. Does it say when this inheritance was finalized? I asked. She paused, paper rustling. Yes. Last March. Last March. 1 month before my parents abandoned me. The timing slammed into me with brutal clarity. They had known. They had known I was about to inherit a life-changing amount of money, and they had still packed my belongings into garbage bags and sold the house without a word. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. The office around me hummed with quiet activity, but I felt detached from it all. Anger simmered beneath the shock, slow and heavy. That evening, I told Clara Bennett everything. They knew, I said, pacing the small office. They knew about the inheritance and still erased me. Clara's jaw tightened. Have you verified it? Not yet, I admitted. Then do that first, she said calmly. Facts before fury. The next morning, I contacted the Mexican law firm listed in the envelope. After several transferred calls and a brief identity verification, a lawyer confirmed everything. The inheritance was real. The funds were mine. And most damning of all, notification had been sent to my parents over a year earlier, when I was still 19. They were informed as your legal guardians at the time, the lawyer explained. I ended the call with numb fingers. That night, over dinner at Professor Reed's house, I finally said the words out loud. They hid it from me, I said. They knew I had money coming and still threw me out. Professor Reed set her fork down slowly. Have you considered why? Greed, I said bitterly. They probably thought they deserved it more. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully. But hiding an inheritance forever is nearly impossible. Maybe they planned to tell you later, on their terms. When you were dependent. The idea made my stomach turn. Or worse, I thought, maybe they never planned to tell me at all. 3 days later, the inheritance funds appeared in my account. Seeing the balance made my chest tighten, not with joy, but with a strange sense of freedom. For the first time since standing in front of my empty childhood home, I wasn't financially tethered to my past. I didn't touch the money. I couldn't, not yet. Before I could process everything, another call came in, this time from the Harrison Foundation. We had been selected as finalists for their grant. Under normal circumstances, I would have celebrated. The grant would transform Safe Haven Project from a student-run effort into a full nonprofit. But my thoughts kept circling back to my parents and their betrayal. The foundation requested a formal presentation before their board in May. I threw myself into preparation. If I couldn't control my past, I could control this. The presentation day arrived faster than expected. I reached the Harrison Foundation's downtown offices an hour early, reviewing my notes in the sleek waiting area. Glass walls. Polished floors. Power and money in every detail. Clara arrived soon after, immaculate in a charcoal suit. Ready, she asked. As I'll ever be, I said, straightening my navy blazer, professional, confident, intentional. The boardroom held 8 people, business leaders, philanthropists, a former judge. At the head of the table stood Robert Harrison himself. Ms. Cruz, Ms. Bennett, he said warmly. We've read your proposal. Show us why Safe Haven deserves our support. I connected my laptop and began. I spoke about displacement. About students sleeping in cars. About families given 2 weeks to disappear. Clara provided legal context, explaining how Safe Haven filled critical gaps. 20 minutes in, as I outlined our expansion plan, the boardroom door opened. A foundation assistant whispered something to Mr. Harrison. He cleared his throat. Ms. Cruz, there are some people here claiming to be your family. They are requesting to speak with you. My heart stopped. They say it's urgent, he added. Clara touched my arm. Your call. Months of silence. Hundreds of unanswered voicemails. And now, this. Please ask them to wait, I said calmly. I'll speak with them after the presentation. Mr. Harrison nodded, clearly impressed. I turned back to the board and finished strong, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. When the board thanked us and promised a decision within 2 weeks, I felt drained, but proud. Outside the boardroom, they were waiting. My parents. And Marco. My mother stood when she saw me, her face a mixture of hope and fear. My father stayed seated, guarded. Marco hovered between them, avoiding my eyes. Elena, my mother began. We need to talk. The reckoning had finally arrived. The reception area of the Harrison Foundation felt too polished for what was about to happen. Soft music played. People moved quietly, professionally. And there we were, 3 people from my past standing in front of the life I had built without them. Clara squeezed my shoulder. I'll give you privacy. Call me later. I nodded, grateful, then turned to my family. Why are you here? I asked evenly. How did you even find me? My mother clasped her purse tightly. We saw the article about your housing project. It mentioned the foundation presentation today. We've been trying to reach you for months. I know, I replied coolly. 247 calls is hard to miss. My father finally stood. This has gone on long enough, Elena. You're being childish. A bitter laugh escaped me. Childish. I came home to find my belongings in garbage bags. You sold our house without telling me. You abandoned me. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We made a mistake. We want to fix it. Now? I asked. After a year. After I rebuilt my entire life without you. Marco shifted awkwardly. Just hear them out, Lena. I know about the inheritance, I said flatly. Silence crashed down. My father's jaw tightened. Who told you? So that's why you're here, I continued. Because the money came through. That's not fair, my mother whispered. You knew about my grandmother's estate last March, I said. You hid it from me. Then you threw me away. My mother's eyes widened. You know everything. I do, I said. So tell me, what do you want now? The tension drew stares, and it was clear this wasn't the place for a family confrontation. We walked to a nearby coffee shop, sitting at a small table that suddenly felt far too tight for old wounds this big. We were ashamed, my mother began, staring into her untouched cup. Your father lost his job. We were drowning. So instead of asking for help, you erased me. I asked quietly. My father spoke next. We found out about the inheritance shortly after you left for spring semester. The lawyer said you'd receive it when you turned 21. So you moved, I said, voice steady but cold. Sold the house. Left me with nothing. We panicked, my mother said. Your father thought you'd be better off without our problems. You had your scholarship, your future. And now? I asked. They exchanged glances. Marco finally spoke. They messed up, Lena. They see that now. They saw what you've built. The Safe Haven Project. So this is about my success? I asked. You couldn't come when I was struggling, but you're here now that I'm visible. No, my mother said quickly. It's about family. I studied them, the lines on my mother's face, the slump in my father's shoulders, the way Marco looked older, less boyish. These were the people who had shaped my childhood and shattered it. I have a new life, I said slowly. People who support me without conditions. We are still your family, my father insisted. I met his gaze. Family doesn't put your belongings in garbage bags. I stood, placing cash on the table to cover the drinks. I don't need closure. I've moved forward. If you truly want to make amends, start by respecting my boundaries. As I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt strong. The next morning, the Harrison Foundation called. Safe Haven Project had been awarded the full grant, plus an additional $50,000 for operational costs. I sank onto my bed, overwhelmed. This wasn't just validation, it was transformation. That afternoon, a national news outlet reached out about featuring Safe Haven in a segment on innovative housing justice. When the story aired 2 weeks later, it reached millions, including, I later learned, my parents. They never called again. The inheritance remained untouched, sitting quietly in my account like a reminder, not of betrayal, but of choice. I decided to place a significant portion into a trust for Safe Haven, ensuring long-term stability and independence from any one donor, including myself. The rest, I invested carefully. Education. Security. Freedom. Months passed. Safe Haven expanded beyond the university, opening a modest office downtown. We hired staff. We trained volunteers. We helped hundreds of people keep roofs over their heads. One evening, as I locked up the office, I paused and looked around. This was mine. Not inherited. Not given. Built. I still thought about my family sometimes, not with anger, but with clarity. They were part of my past, not my future. And that was okay. Life didn't slow down after the grant, it accelerated. Within weeks, Safe Haven Project transformed from a cramped operation into a full-scale nonprofit. We moved into a modest downtown office with real conference rooms, proper filing systems, and a waiting area that no longer felt like an afterthought. The walls were bare at first, but to me, they looked like possibility. We hired 2 full-time case coordinators and a legal assistant. Law students rotated through for clinical hours, and volunteer attorneys donated evenings and weekends. The phones never stopped ringing. I learned quickly that leadership wasn't about doing everything yourself, it was about building a system that could survive without you. Some nights, exhaustion crept in quietly. I'd sit alone in my office after everyone left, staring at case files while memories surfaced uninvited. The abandoned house. The garbage bags. The voice on the phone telling me to deal with it. But then there were moments that grounded me. A single father who hugged me after winning his case. A freshman who cried with relief when her lease was reinstated. A grandmother who baked us cookies every month after we stopped her eviction. These moments became my anchor. The national media attention brought both opportunity and scrutiny. Donations trickled in at first, then poured. Emails flooded my inbox, requests for advice, partnership offers, interviews. With visibility came questions about my family. Is it true your own parents evicted you? A journalist asked gently during one interview. I smiled professionally. My work is informed by lived experience, I said. That's all that matters. I didn't mention the inheritance. I didn't mention the calls. Some stories were mine alone. Professor Reed remained my constant. We still had dinner together every Sunday, when schedules allowed. One evening, she watched me stir my soup absently. You've done something remarkable, she said. But don't forget to rest. I don't know how, I admitted. She nodded. Then you'll learn. Strength without rest becomes another kind of cage. Around the same time, I received an unexpected email from Marco. Subject: Just checking in. It was short. Awkward. He said he was doing okay. Community college was harder than he expected. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said he hoped I was well. I stared at the message for a long time. Marco hadn't packed my things. He hadn't sold the house. But he also hadn't stopped it. In the end, I replied with 2 sentences. I'm glad you're doing well. Take care of yourself. It wasn't reconciliation, but it wasn't erasure either. That winter, Safe Haven faced its first major challenge. A developer filed a lawsuit claiming we were interfering with lawful business practices. The claim was weak, but the intent was clear: intimidate us into backing down. Fear rippled through the team. We can't afford this, one coordinator said quietly. We can't afford not to fight, I replied. Clara Bennett stepped in without hesitation. We'll handle it, she said. Pro bono. The case dragged on for months, draining energy but strengthening resolve. When it was finally dismissed, the relief in the office was palpable. We celebrated with cheap takeout and laughter that bordered on hysteria. That night, as I walked home, my phone buzzed. A voicemail. From my mother. I didn't open it. I had learned something important over the past year: healing doesn't always mean reopening doors. Sometimes it means knowing which ones to keep closed. Spring returned quietly. On the anniversary of the day I found my house empty, I drove past the old street without stopping. New owners lived there now. The maple tree still stood. I felt nothing but distance. Later that day, I stood in Safe Haven's main office, watching volunteers help clients, listening to the hum of purpose. I thought about the girl who had stood on that porch with shaking hands and nowhere to go. She didn't know it then, but she was standing at the beginning, not the end. That evening, as the office lights dimmed, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. I began outlining a long-term plan for Safe Haven: policy advocacy, housing reform, education initiatives. This wasn't just a reaction to pain anymore. It was a vision. And for the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I was building beyond it. The future arrived quietly. Not with applause or dramatic turning points, but with ordinary mornings, coffee cooling on my desk, sunlight filtering through Safe Haven's windows, the low murmur of people being helped instead of turned away. The kind of life that feels steady because it's earned. Safe Haven project entered its 3rd year stronger than I ever imagined. We expanded into 2 neighboring cities, partnered with universities, and launched free housing rights workshops that filled entire auditoriums. Students lined up afterward with questions, relief written across their faces when they realized they weren't powerless. I learned that impact doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers and still changes everything. The inheritance remained mostly untouched. What I did use went toward endowing Safe Haven's emergency housing fund and creating scholarships for students facing displacement. I never attached my name to them. Recognition had never been the goal, freedom was. One afternoon, I received a handwritten letter addressed to the office. No return address. Inside was a single page. Elena, I don't expect forgiveness. I only want you to know we see you now. I'm sorry we failed you when you needed us most. I hope the life you've built brings you peace. Mom, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Not as a reopening of wounds, but as proof of something I had already accepted: accountability, when it comes too late, is about the sender, not the receiver. I didn't reply. That summer, Safe Haven helped its 1,000th client. We marked the moment with a small gathering: coffee, cake, laughter echoing through hallways that once felt impossibly quiet. Clara raised a toast. To Elena, she said. For turning loss into leadership. I smiled, Humbled, uncomfortable with the spotlight, but grateful. Professor Reed attended too, standing slightly apart, observing with quiet pride. When the room emptied, she hugged me. "You didn't just survive," she said. "You transformed." I thought about the version of myself who believed worth was measured by approval, by family, by obedience, by silence. She felt very far away. On the anniversary of my grandmother's death, I traveled to Mexico alone. I visited the town she'd lived in, walked the streets she once knew, and stood at the edge of the property that had unknowingly changed my life. I realized then that inheritance isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about resilience passed down silently. About women who endure, adapt, and leave something stronger behind, even if they are never thanked for it. Back home, my parents remained distant. No more calls. No surprise visits. Just quiet, respectful space. And that was enough. One evening, after locking up the office, I caught my reflection in the glass door. Older. Calmer. Grounded. Not the girl left behind, but the woman who walked forward anyway. I used to believe family was something you were given. Now I know it's something you choose, and something you build. Safe Haven's walls were lined with framed thank you notes and photos from people we'd helped. Proof that belonging doesn't require blood, only commitment, dignity, and care. As I turned off the lights, I felt something settle inside me. Not closure. Peace. Because I no longer measured my worth through anyone else's eyes, not my parents', not society's, not even my past. I had become my own home.